Project Motor Racing's first DLC is here, and I'm going to let you know whether you should buy it or not, and also I'm going to give you my honest take on the full state of Project Motor Racing right now. So this DLC costs $8.99, and it includes a track which I think they called Takemiya, and I was really excited for this. I thought Takemiya is not a track I've heard of before, Japanese track, driving Super GT cars, like a new circuit for me. That's great. I'm really excited for this. It also comes with modern Super GT 500 cars, and also it comes with classic Super GT 500 cars, which is really cool. Now, because it's Project Motor Racing, you need kind of a PhD to actually do the force feedback. These are some changes I made to the force feedback, just so you can see. I do not like this. I think it's stupid. I think it's stupid, especially on console. I think they should explain this better. There should be presets. I think it's a dumb way of doing the game, frankly, to have every car needing like force feedback set up per car. That's my opinion. But this is me diving into the modern Super GT cars here, and I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to show you me driving the classic cars as well. Now, obviously, as soon as I get on the grid, I can see this is Okayama. So, in a way, I've got to be honest with you, I find that a bit deceptive, because I thought this was a new track, but it's Okayama. And if I knew it was Okayama, I would think about it differently. Now, as it happens, I quite like driving Okayama. I have good memories here from iRacing. It's an included track for free in iRacing, so I've had some great battles. But I just don't know why they do this or how they get away with it. I saw Le Mans Ultimate threw some shots at Project Motor Racing in one of their videos saying they have the official Silverstone and Project Motor Racing have Northampton. So I just appreciate some clarity there on like, just either call it Okayama or, I don't know, do a fictional track. I don't understand the halfway house. Anyway, maybe I'm complaining too much, but that's just my perception coming in. Now, the cars themselves are really... Now, this is where I've got to be very careful with my words here. I find the cars fun to drive, okay? I actually find this whole race you're watching here very fun. Like, I'm having a lot of fun doing this, as you're going to see. And this is a very unusual experience for me. Because if I was driving Super GT cars in Gran Turismo, yes, they'd be older cars, but they still look great, sound great. But I wouldn't be able to have a race like this offline. I've had plenty of really good Super GT, aka Group B races in Gran Turismo online. Top split, all of that kind of stuff. Winning top split races. You know, Group B at, Group 2, I should say, at Red Bull Ring is a really good combination for me online. I like that when it comes up. But offline, there's no point. The Gran Turismo AI, whether you do the standard version or the Sophie version, you're not going to get a race like this. Now, there's plenty of quirks about Project Motor Racing. There's a massive caveat here. When I say that I find the cars fun to drive, that doesn't mean they have good handling. And you saw there that curb. There's an exit curb here at Okayama or Takemiya. I'm just going to call it Okayama. Oh my god. I'm going to call it Okayama. Let me know what you would call it in the comments. But these curbs just really pull you off the circuit. And I drive in real life. Like, I've raced in real life on real circuits. Only a few days ago, I was driving my Peugeot RCZ at Castle Combe, getting all over the curbs. And I can tell you, curbs do not behave like this in real life in my experience, whether that's driving, you know, the 488 GT3 or the Mazda X5 or my car or open wall cockpit cars or everything I've driven. I enjoy getting on curbs. It's rewarding in real life to get onto curbs because you're maximizing the corner entry and exit. And that's kind of why curbs exist. I've also been up and close and personal with curbs when I do track walks, etc. And they shouldn't behave like they do in Project Motor Racing, in my opinion. And this is a massive caveat because although the cars are fun to drive, and I'm going to come back to the handling, I struggle to be incentivized to spend a lot of time in Project Motor Racing beyond testing hardware because I don't feel like it rewards me for, you know, maximizing track limits. And I have a fundamental issue with that because, you know, in my background in karting, so much of karting is about maximizing track limits, and the trade-off is your own body, because when you smash curbs to cut track limits, you end up, you know, smashing up your body. In sim racing, you know, I enjoy it more because there isn't that trade-off of battering my own body. But here, it struggles with the curbs. Now, let's get to the meat of the question here. These cars, in my opinion, handle very unnaturally. They reward you massively for being on the brake very late in the corner. You can rotate the cars like crazy, and then get on the power and carry a huge amount of rotation through the corner, which I think is very unnatural. I think the way that it rewards you being on the brake so late, again, my experience of driving cars in real life, I haven't driven a Super GT, but I have driven the 488 GT. They don't reward you for being on the brake late in the corner. You have to get the car into a neutral state where it's going to corner, whereas in Project Motor Racing, I don't want to say it's like driving a shopping trolley, but it's all about pivoting that rear end, and it's incredibly forgiving on pivoting that rear end. Incredibly forgiving, and you can push it to extreme limits. Like, sure, you will spin at some stage, but you can push it to incredible limits. So if you're someone that likes driving iRacing, where you can't push out the rear end that much because you'll just swap ends, you're probably not going to enjoy Project Motor Racing, in my view. But coming back to what I just said, this race is more fun than the equivalent Group 2 race in Gran Turismo 7. I would not have this amount of fun in Gran Turismo 7. Both the cars are more enjoyable to drive, I would say. Even with what I've said about trailing so late, I think there are more complex in the cars in Gran Turismo 7. There's obviously a lot more going in Project Motor Racing with the tyre temperatures, etc., than is even shown to you in Gran Turismo 7. Although I have modded Gran Turismo 7 to show you that they do tyre temperatures, but they don't really surface it. It's not that important in the game, to be honest. Which in Project Motor Racing, if you've been watching my channel, if you're a supporter of my channel, you'll have seen me say since day one how important tyre temps are in Project Motor Racing. By the way, you can see my rear left is getting a toasty above 100 degrees centigrade. I'm certain if I was driving this car at the Sim Racing Expo in 2025, that would be about 130 degrees now, and I'd be having a bad time. And then I wouldn't be able to push, ironically, so hard in the corners. But I'm sure they've made the game easier there. I'm sure they've turned down some values. Unless they can categorically show me that isn't the case, I believe since Sim Racing Expo, it's harder to really overheat your tyres. Like, the game is more forgiving. But fundamentally, the cars sound good. I'm in cockpit view here. The AI is keeping a good pace, as you're going to see near the end of this video. I keep trying to do this overtake, and that is a little bit, that wasn't clean, let's be honest, but that is a bit how real racing works. In real racing, in my experience, you tend to have fairly close field spread, certainly much closer. Gran Turismo AI is like being on a track day with everyone in different cars, even if it's a spec race. This to me is more like my experience of when I won my karting championships, the whole field is extremely close, and that's a sensation I'm getting here. So often you have to wait for that one corner on the circuit where you feel like you have a good chance and try and execute it, rather than the Gran Turismo way where you can kind of like send up every corner. So I'm enjoying this. With 6 laps into the race, it's going quickly for me. I'm having a good time. I'm locking up when I'm too hard on the brakes on the way in, but as long as you avoid the lock-up, you can really trail it into the corner, get that rotation. See, I'm avoiding the exit curbs now, which I don't like. I do not like this. Now, obviously, I'm going to compare this with the classic Super GT car, so that's coming up as soon as I finish this race. I'm going to show you that, and I've got some queries about the liveries in those cars as well, which I don't fully understand. But if you're on console and you're already enjoying Project Motor Racing, I would say pick up this DLC. Because if you're enjoying Project Motor Racing on console, you probably want to support the developer a bit because they're under fire. The DLC is not, I would say, overpriced at all. $8.99 for, I think, at least 8 cars and this fake Okayama circuit, which is basically Okayama circuit. I think it's really good value. Le Mans Ultimate, as I release this, my video will now be public that they've released a Genesis for free, which is very cool. But they're doing Catalunya and one car together for $8.99. So you're getting a better deal in Project Motor Racing. I do feel as though in Project Motor Racing's head, they probably thought that the launch was going to go amazingly. They were going to give Gran Turismo a black eye on launch, and then they were going to really jab Gran Turismo with this DLC. By the way, I'm pretty sure they've replaced the Stig as the voice. So I don't know whether the Stig has been fired. I don't know whether the Stig has asked for his name to be removed from the game. I'm not sure we're, as players, entitled to know the ins and outs there. But I'm just relaying to you that I'm pretty sure that's not the Stig's voice. Whether it's an AI voice or not, I don't know. I did see that the game director for AI wrote a Steam review for Project Motor Racing where he trashed the game. So I don't know what's going on at Project Motor Racing. I just know when I was at the Sim Racing Expo, and have a look here, by the way, I want to show you, I get on that curb and I get on the power, my rear left's, pretty high temperature, and I lose the car. And for me, this is good. This is good. If you remember me in Germany, the thing I said about the game that could be interesting is because it's so tyre sensitive, you could end up in battles where the drivers that really look after the tyres kind of have a bit of a delta advantage at the end of the race. And I wasn't particularly looking after my tyres here. That is the downside of that driving style, though I think overall it is faster. And, I'm going to come last in this race, but it's been really enjoyable. It's been really enjoyable. And I think, the tyre temperatures are still very, very, very important when it comes to Project Motor Racing. See, I don't know what happened with the stick there. I'm not sure we're entitled to know, but I'm just relaying to you. I think it's interesting. Something else I find interesting is that Super GT is like a fairly international series. You've got Sasha Fenestras there, who I've interviewed quite a few times. You have Iga Fraga there from Brazil. Here they've put every driver as a Japanese driver. I don't want to say it's not racist, but it just feels slightly stereotypical. I just spent the weekend with Zach O'Sullivan, who's in Super GT 300. He's a British driver. So drivers do go over there. Now, so it would be cool to have a bit of mixture of nationalities, but very small point. You can see the cars here. I'm pretty sure that's the R34 that had the classic Pennzoil livery, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the iconic Castrol liveries and stuff like that as well. So, my knowledge of Super GT back in that era is not super strong, but I don't think they have all the official liveries. And this is an interesting point, because if that is the case, and just let me know in the comments whether I'm right or wrong, then you're paying for a Super GT DLC, but you're not getting an officially licensed track, whether that means anything to you or not. It might not mean anything to you, and you might not be getting the official liveries as well. And that's a little bit of a difference to when you pay in, for example, in Le Mans Ultimate. Because in Le Mans Ultimate, I've just been covering the Genesis early. There was a very strict embargo on that because they're revealing the Genesis livery in real life as well at the same time. And it's like all one-to-one Le Mans Ultimate in reality. Here there's a bit of a difference. So this is my Super GT car. You can see interesting cockpit view here, which I'm going to keep. I'm going to keep it authentic, but kind of like an interesting view. Tricky in some of the right-handers. I much prefer these cars to drive. These cars are way more fun to drive for me than the modern cars. Again, going all over that curb. There's just a little bit more inherent, I would say, damping in them, or the opposite of tautness. Like they're a little bit more slack. They're a little bit less tight. And I feel like this is where Project Motor Racing shines more. I feel like a bit of a broken record here, but the older cars for me are more enjoyable to drive Project Motor Racing. Also, I can drive the Super GT cars in Gran Turismo, the Group B stuff. They're all like fairly modern, although they do have like the Pennzoil, R34 and stuff like that. However, I feel like for this sort of racing, I cannot do this in iRacing. I can't drive these sort of cars. When I drive old cars in iRacing, it's usually as part of Jimmy Broadbent's 23-hour charity race, and they're usually horrendous to drive, and they take us weeks to tune. But we're incentivized to that because it's a big charity race. Here, I'm just driving this out of the box. The race feels a bit more lively. To me, it has more character with these cars. I like the character of these cars. And this is a different race to the first one in terms of it's not all, strictly nose to tail. But I'm enjoying this, I would say more than the first race. I enjoyed the first race, but I'm enjoying it even more because the cars are even more fun to drive. So I'm putting some praise on Project Motor Racing, and I think it does. When it merits it, I think it does deserve some praise. The performance for me is running pretty good as well. I did notice some more tree popping, which was quite unusual. You're not really going to notice it. Oh, this curb, man. As soon as you go off that, you're on a one-way trip to the grass. You can see the popping of the trees. When you're driving, you're not really going to notice it that much. When you're looking back, the replay performance is still a bit weird as well. And there isn't really a good photo mode, as far as I can tell, which is also a little bit annoying. But I like driving these cars. So if you're on console, fantastic. $8.99, good price DLC. You already know whether you like the game or not. If you're on PC, if you're on PC and you like the game, I think the same thing still applies. It's a good value DLC. If you're on PC and you don't like Project Motor Racing, but you have it, okay, I don't think it's worth picking up. I don't think it's going to change anything for you. It's one more track, Okayama, and these cars are like, you know, there's other classes of cars in the game that are also classic cars that you can enjoy, but you're already not enjoying it. These cars aren't going to change anything. If you don't like Project Motor Racing and you don't have Project Motor Racing, this is very unlikely to change anything for you unless you're a hardcore Super GT fan. And if you're a hardcore Super GT fan, and if I'm correct that liveries aren't all the official ones, and I might be wrong on that, then, you know, that might actually become a bit of a turn-off. I don't know. But I can see myself going around, having fun offline, driving these cars. Whether I'm going to have fun online, I'm not sure. But I do want to show you some third-person replay camera footage of me really swinging these cars around. And again, this is a big caveat I have with the game. It's very unrealistic to drive these cars. So this is that third-person angle, and you can see that when you keep the brake on quite late into the corner, you kind of like, it seems like it pushes the front of the car down, but it doesn't stop you carrying momentum through the corner. And what I would expect to see is more understeer when you do that. When you're carrying brake so late into the corner, I'd expect the car to start understeering. But often here, you can carry the brake, and you can see just right at the end there, you get that rotation. And I'm pretty sure you would be able to exploit that. And again, that might be due to some kind of ride height, or it might be due to some, like, you know, it could be due to like a lot of simulation of the car on how the weight transfer affects the balance and frees up that rear axle. But it's not, to me, this is not reality. Again, I haven't driven a Super GT car, but I'd be very surprised if they're driving in this way. I'm kind of tempted to ask Zach Sullivan or Sasha Fenatraz or someone kind of if this is realistic. But I do drive cars on circuits enough to know that I wouldn't expect to get this amount of rotation. So just, you know, I'm interested to know what you think in the comments about that, if you think that's just a little trade-off. And also let me know what you think about my opinions on the DLC. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.